You're loading into a game and you run into 3 of your friends on the other team. All decent players. It's now on. A trio versus trio situation where only one trio can win, one group of friends can win, and the other 3 people are likely to complain for the rest of the night or day about how bad their randoms were. This video is going to let you in on the anticipation of playing in a trio and why I think the trio system is kind of silly. So let's talk about what a trio actually is. It's pretty simple. It's just 3 players playing together, usually people who they know. Now, to understand why this is a bit more of a problem, I'm going to have to talk a little bit about the Pokemon Unite matchmaking system. So very quickly, you can be a solo if you just play the game by yourself. That's pretty self-explanatory, right? So that's a solo, and a duo is when you play with one more person. 2 of you, duo. Once again, pretty self-explanatory. So a trio, of course, is when you have 3 people, and it's the maximum amount of people you can have before you have a fully pre-made party. And what I mean by fully pre-made party is a 5-stack, or 5 players joining the same lobby and queuing as a 5. So trio, bit problematic, as you might see, because it gives you the largest amount of control in the game, and you are all playing together. And this is the most amount of players you can play together before the game physically doesn't let you, which is good. I'm not going to talk about it today, but 4 players in the same game from the same party is really silly. Anyway, so now that we know what a trio is, what does this mean for the matchmaking? What's happening here? So okay, this section, we're just really going to quickly talk about this, but the game is going to give you bad matches, basically. Since you're a trio queue, you can have 3 people from any set of rank and masters, and as we know already, everyone pretty much gets masters, and if you don't get masters, you can still play with your friends in ultra as a master. So it's pretty lenient on what kind of skill ranges you can be talking about of players. And because there's no differentiation about any type of master, pretty much if you play with a Master 2600, Master 1800, and Master 1000, all 3 of you can end up in the same game with a trio, and then you can get 2 randoms who, of course, their MMR ranges could be literally anything. So, as you can tell, it's going to try to find another trio or someone else to match that game. And what might actually happen is you might get a match with 3 evenly ranked, so they might find the average is about 1600 Master, and say, hey, look, okay, we're gonna get 3 1600s versus this 2800, this 1600, and this 1000. Now, if you play Pokemon Unite, of course, team game does matter, but when you have a differentiation of that large amount, just because they want to find the average sweet spot, it's gonna cause some problems in the game. So the game's probably not gonna be matched correctly, and I guess this is what we were going about, talking about the ranked system kind of being broken in this end. Yeah, the MMR ranking, not gonna be great. Now, another problem can be solo queue players and how they affect the system. So, being a trio queue, you're probably going to cause one of 2 situations. There's going to either be a duo on your team, and the other team will have a corresponding duo, or it will be 2 solos. Now that we've explained all that, you can sort of see why it's pretty unfair for the 2 solos, or even the duo. At every point in the game, the trio is going to have more control and a more dominant sector of the game under their control, because they have 60% of the team under their thumb. This is just the friends, everything, right? So yeah, that's probably the main problem, is just going over matchmaking. We're going to expand that a bit. So let's talk about what it's like to play against another trio that is good or about your skill level. And I think this game is a good example. We have 2 randoms on each team, and we have 2 trios with pretty decent players. So that experience, it's a bit different. It's going to be based on matchups. So the characters we pick and the overall team. If the team works really well together, as in we pick good characters that have good synergies and are strong with each other, the game is going to feel pretty good for the trio that does pick those. And for the trio, because you can't actually see what your opponents are picking, it becomes very hard to decide what characters you're going to pick. You might know what players you're playing against, but you never know what anyone's going to pick. And that's going to create a very interesting part of the game where you're going to see, some characters that are rather awkward in this setting, that are really overwhelmed, being played, and then just, not being able to do much in that game because they are playing against good players, they are being pushed to the edge, and they're sort of losing their lead and advantage. So that's one aspect of that, and I guess I'm going to go into the other aspect, which is these 2 other players on the team. And they have a lot of control in the matchup when the trios are evenly skilled, because if you can think about it, 60% of the team is on the same page. It's going to come down to that 40% sort of guiding the game in their own unique way. Like, my ideology when I go and play in a trio match with my friends is we're going to pick on the other non-trio. Because more than likely, they're going to be giving us free kills. And if we're really, really confident we're that much better than the other trio, yeah, we'll run at them all game, we'll have lots of fun. But when you have this, as I said, similarly skilled trios, usually they go and pick on the non-trio people. Because it's just easier to execute against them. They don't have any communication, they likely are not to play together and then have weaker strategies. They're likely not going to follow up on each other's gameplay as well. So there's a few ideas there, and I guess it can make it competitive in that sense, because you're going to get generally a pretty evenly skilled match just from the players, but then you're going to have these two duos, or like four solos, and they can actually complicate the match in terms of like playing ability for everyone involved. So now that we've gone over that, yeah, it is actually quite a good thing to play against two trios. But I mean, like at that point, I guess like with all the matchmaking concerns we listed, wouldn't it just be better to play a ranked 5 stack? Probably would be. So I'm gonna go over a bit about how the solo duo queue system works in other MOBAs, and sort of works to some extent in Unite, but why they don't necessarily have trios, and if they do, what's the reason behind it. So the 5v5 game is the same in Unite like it is in these other MOBAs, like League of Legends, like Wild Rift, like Dota, so on, so forth. But there's a power dynamic that is in a team that is in a trio, and League of Legends in particular doesn't have trio queue for this reason. I think having 60% of the team on board with your plans, you're going to create a little bit of a power dynamic. And while Dota does allow having a trio queue, I do believe that is the crux, that their matchmaking system does take a little bit longer to get games, and it is a little bit more refined in this sense. Now, that's just something that we don't have in Unite. Like in Dota and in League, they both have pretty solid communication systems that allow you to accurately and quickly convey what you need to do, and they're also slower paced games. Like we're talking about Unite is going at 1,000 miles an hour, and League and Dota, they go fast as well. They're not slow games by any means, but they definitely do have dull periods. In Unite, you're going to have maybe 2 minutes off the gas. Whereas in these other games, you're going to have a lot of time to think and discuss and be able to actually type out your responses. Like in Unite, you can't type to your teammates. So if you don't have a microphone, or if you don't have your microphone connected to your Switch, you pretty much have zero communication with them outside of these meaningless pings. Which I guess, you know, to touch on a little bit, this ping system is pretty terrible. Whereas these other games, Dota has extensive pings which can ping every single ability in the game. League of Legends is the same thing. It's really unfair in this aspect of communication, because those games, they are slower. They do allow for people to type. They do allow for people to talk. And, you know, Unite, it's like we have 3 seconds to go, otherwise we lose the game. And, you know, well, what I'm meant to ping, pressure, keep the pressure on. Like, what does that even mean? So I guess when we look at that from that perspective, it's pretty weak. And so I guess this is why, in conclusion, I do think the idea of these trio queues are really bad. Because the solo duo, okay, I think I understand why. Duo is only 40% of the team. You can't influence any major votes. You can't block surrender votes, like, effectively. It's like, you know, you can choose to carry the game, but you can't really completely ruin the game for teams if you're both trying your hardest, like and you're trying to work with the other duo or the other free solo players. But as a trio, you can effectively make the game a 2v5. Or you can make the game a 3v5, like so on and so forth. It's a lot easier to play as just a duo, and I think it makes the game a little bit more fun, knowing that, you know, you're gonna get matched from more duos. Trio, I appreciate the fact that they're trying to get all our friends involved, but it just doesn't sound like a smart decision in terms of like the game thinking and like clearly like thinking, oh, okay, well, trio is a good system here. Yeah, it doesn't feel like that when I played against it in every type of this game. So I will say I do think it's quite silly, and it probably makes sense because they did produce Mewtwo. This is coming from the company. They made Zacian, they made Mewtwo. I don't think the trio queue and them thinking about the impact that this makes on the game is like necessarily a problem. You can see in this game fight, like it's like the trio is like dead and the game's just won. It's pretty much helpless. So yeah, those are my like little thoughts on how this matchmaking in trio v trio, it can be really good, it can be pretty bad too. I think overall, I do think that it should be removed, and maybe they should look at finding more ways to invest people playing with their friends, if that's something they want to do. But they definitely shouldn't be looking into this thing like, hey, look, the trios are saving our game. The trios definitely not. Like Timmy, the thing that's gonna save your game is nerfing effing Mewtwo, man. You need to nerf this character. So if they listen to this, forget my trio argument, nerf Mewtwo. But it would be nice if they touched on that. Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. Just had some trios, trio v trio matchup with a few friends of mine. They're all great players, and so you can see you get a bit more of a funner match, and you probably see some of my points reflected in the gameplay itself. So either way, I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll see you in the next video.